Ice Cauldron might be one of the most confusing cards I know of. This thing took me a while to understand. Ice Cauldron is an artifact from Ice Age that costs 4 mana to cast. The original text says, put a charge counter on Ice Cauldron and put a spell card face up on Ice Cauldron. Note the type and amount of mana used to pay this activation cost. Use this ability only if there are no charge counters on Ice Cauldron. You may play that spell card as though it were in your hand. Now, you have to tap Ice Cauldron to use that ability, and you can pay any amount of mana you want when you do that. It has another tap ability that says, remove the charge counter from Ice Cauldron to add mana of the type and amount last used to put a charge counter on Ice Cauldron to your mana pool. This mana is usable only to cast the spell on top of Ice Cauldron. So this card is pretty interesting. It's kind of like Animate Dead in that it's trying to express a relatively simple concept, but the confines of the rule engine kind of make the actual execution of the idea more complicated than the concept is itself. You can tap this card to store a spell and some or all of the mana to cast the spell. Then you can tap Ice Cauldron at a later time to add the mana that you stored and to cast the spell. That's a pretty simple idea, but the first couple of times I read this card, my eyes glazed over. It's not actually complicated, but it sure is a lot of words to express what it's trying to say. The card itself is interesting, but I wouldn't say it's particularly strong. I do think there are some interesting uses of this card though. If you were to play a burn deck, you could put this down on turn 4 and then spend turn 5 and 6 setting up a fireball for 8, I guess. That's pretty good, right? I'm sure all kinds of burn decks are chomping at the bits to spend turns 4, 5, and 6 setting up a fireball for 8. I wonder if Elf Ball ever seriously played this or ever considered playing it, because it's maybe not bad in Elf Ball. They would get the mana to play it sooner and they would have more mana to put into it for a bigger fireball. I don't know. It's just a fun thought, imagining Llanowar Elves and Ice Cauldron with a fireball finisher. And I really can't stress enough that I don't think this card is that good, but it is really silly. It's a funny idea and I definitely appreciate cards like this. Yeah, it's just a really fun card to think about, right? And to try to make work. There are some really funny things you can do. It's like, like a lot of these cards that aren't good, I'm like, oh, it's funny in Commander, right? Like, you could do something in Commander. Like, that, like, you can't say that about every fucking card. But I do think this one is pretty funny in Commander. It's also a card with some weird quirks that I think are pretty interesting. It's intended that you only have one card exiled with Ice Cauldron at any time, but you can exile multiple cards with this just by activating the second ability and choosing not to cast the spell, because it'll remove the charge counter and then you are free to exile another creature card under Ice Cauldron. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you could then also proliferate or use some other method to increase the counters on the card, and then you could cast both cards under the Ice Cauldron. I'm not sure why you would do that, but if you did do that, a funny thing would happen. Let's say you exiled Time Walk and a Farmstead with your Ice Cauldron. So we'll say first you exiled the Time Walk and you didn't add any mana when you did that. Then you removed the counter. Then you exiled the Farmstead and paid 2 white mana. Then you found a way to get a second counter onto Ice Cauldron. You tap the Ice Cauldron and then remove a counter, which will give you 2 white mana, which you can use to cast Farmstead. You can do that because, well, you have to cast the Farmstead to get to the Time Walk. After you do that, if for some reason you haven't lost this game yet and the turn comes back to you, you can then tap the Ice Cauldron and remove a charge counter, the last charge counter, and the card will make you 2 white mana that can only be used to help you cast the Time Walk. That's a weird side effect because the card taps to add the mana paid the last time a card was exiled with this card. And that's kind of funny, if you ask me. I guess you could do something to break that, but it's definitely not worth it. I guess it's also worth noting that you don't actually have to tap Ice Cauldron to cast the spell. You exile the card with Ice Cauldron, and then you can cast that spell at any time you could normally cast that spell. The second tap ability is just a mana ability to give you the mana that you put into the spell when you exiled the spell, whatever it was. And it's also to remove the charge counter. So you could theoretically tap Ice Cauldron and add a charge counter to the card while adding no mana into Ice Cauldron. Then you could just cast the spell you exiled with Ice Cauldron, and Ice Cauldron would now have a counter on it that you would need to tap and remove before you could use the card again to exile another card under it. That's kind of neat. This is an interesting card, and I kind of appreciate just how much, like, dumb nonsense this card can get into with the rules interactions, despite the fact that the card kind of really doesn't do anything. The only advantage to this card is really splitting a card's cost in two, which is definitely a useful trait, but it isn't as useful as it sounds. This card is really cool though. I don't play with this one much, but I do kind of want to see if I can make like an old school elf ball thing work. That sounds pretty funny. I'm gonna try that. What do you guys think of Ice Cauldron? Because I think that this card is weird as hell, and I love it a lot for that. Unfortunately, they never reprinted this card, and it's not even popular enough on Magic Online, so it never got any other art. So we only have the one art to talk about. Dan Fraser illustrated Ice Cauldron, and this piece is fantastic. The shading is sick as hell and looks so realistic for what it is. I don't know why I appreciate it so much, but it's just so interesting. The ragged and shabby cloak is another aspect that's well done. Shit, the entire piece is well done. I genuinely can't, like, think of something in this art that I don't like. It's a shame this card never got a reprint, but it is on the reserve list. Also, you can buy it for like $2, so that should tell you just how useful this card is. Still, that's really all I have to say on Ice Cauldron. Overall, I really like the card. I think it's interesting and kind of fun, and I like the art. Its ability is definitely kind of stupid, and not something that's all that valuable, but it is something to think about, and it's a pretty cool idea to mess with. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And like always, you can like the video if you liked it, you can subscribe if you give a shit, but either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thank you for watching.